9:03, Friday, April 17th. This is a meeting of the Metropolitan Planning, of the Transportation Policy Board, the Metropolitan Planning Organization. Let's begin with the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First, I just want to recognize that we have State Representative Mr. Bill Gomez here. Thank you for being here at the TPB. And then we also have the El Paso County Administrator, Mr. Steve Norwood, who is also his first meeting. Mr. Norwood, thank you for being here. So we will next begin with the open comment period. We have 3 speakers. First one, Zania Hernandez.
Good morning, board. Thank you all for having us here this morning. I'm with Metropia, and it's actually Xenia Hernandez.
So I guess the board is that Xenia will be making a presentation on item 9, and so she signed up on the public comment.
Yeah, I apologize for that.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Sorry about that.
No problem. And then also, I guess Mr. Scott White is also signed up for number 9A.
For public comment and 9A.
Oh, okay. So then Mr. Scott White.
Good morning, board. Glad to see everybody here today. It's a beautiful day outside, and I'm glad that soon we'll be able to actually, for me at least, ride my bike to the EPMPO meetings, because they'll be much closer to where I am. And that brings me up to what we'll also be doing next month in May. It's going to be Bike Month. And so I know for some of you, you know that we're going to be doing the proclamation with the council on the 28th there at City Hall. But we also want to invite you to all the activities that are going to be happening during Bike Month. There's a calendar online if you'd like at elpasobikemonth.com. We're going to be starting with the proclamation on the 28th and starting with rides on the 1st. We're going to have a rolling town with Congressman Beto O'Rourke on the 16th. And there's just going to be an awful lot of activities and fun, and we hope you all come out at one point or another and be a part of the fun and enjoy it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mr. Brandon Guzman from the Office of Representatives Cesar Blanco. Or is he also here for item 9C?
No, I think he just signed in the wrong area.
Okay. Everybody's here for item 9.
We're going to have to use a pink or something very, highlighted.
Okay. Next, the Executive Director's report.
Good morning, board members. Michael Mena with the El Paso EPMPO. Today's briefing to the policy board are planning activities that are occurring right now in New Mexico. There are 3 plans out there that holistically will be completed by this summer. And so the first item here is the New Mexico Chihuahua Border Master Plan. Again, is that this plan is, the full intent is to identify the development of an integrated border master plan to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the New Mexico Chihuahua cross-border traffic. Does anybody have any? If you remember a couple of years ago, Texas also did one for the El Paso area. And so around the nation, there's several border master plans that have completed. And I think that New Mexico is probably the last one that's targeted for completion in this summer. If anybody has any questions about that. The second one is that the New Mexico DOT is also developing and close to completing their long-range plan. And so the purpose of the plan is to provide a vision of how New Mexico transportation systems can support the well-being of the residents and visitors now and in the future for New Mexico. So ideally here is that The state is using a multimodal approach to identify the needs and try to find funding for those needs. If anybody has any questions or comments about that. The next item is the Santa Teresa International Rail Study, and this is being led by the New Mexico Border Authority in coordination with the New Mexico DOT. And so the purpose of this study is to evaluate the potential rail bypass routes and a new U.S.-Mexico rail crossing in southern New Mexico. There's a website provided for all of these, but again, if anybody has any questions or comments, we can certainly provide additional information. Okay. The next item, this is officially our last meeting at the policy board here at this location. And so what we have up there for you all is, again, a map indicating where the new location would be. It'll be adjacent to City 1 and City 2. And again, is that the next policy board meeting will be held there, along with all the other committee meetings. Parking is provided right next to the facility, and we'll send another communication about that as well. So that everybody understands is that next week, the MPO will employ a 410 schedule. And so Thursday of next week, if you're trying to get a hold of us in the afternoon, we are effectively shutting down. So the IT department is coming in and starting to move us. We'll be closed on Friday as well, but nonetheless, my cell phone still works, all right? So if you all need something from the MPO, please call me. And then we also have a new phone number. Our current phone number will still be effective 2 months once we move. And again, we'll send out all this information as well. Can you scroll down just a little bit more? Okay. Okay. And then again, this information is available on the website, not on the website, on the website. Sorry about that. Yeah, we don't want to be on the west side. Again, if anybody has, yeah, so if anybody has any questions or comments about this. Okay.
No, just bring quarters. You can park anywhere you want.
Next, approve the minutes for the March 20th, 2015 TPB meeting.
Move to approve.
There was a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item number 5, authorize the TPB chairperson to execute the planning agreement between the NM DOT, New Mexico DOT, and the El Paso MPO.
Again, Board, Mike Medina with the El Paso MPO. Before you is our planning agreement that all MPOs essentially have with the DOTs to access federal aid. And so this contract before you has a life of 4 years. It will cover 2 spans of the UPWP, which is our work program. And so effectively, the state of New Mexico has standardized the template, and so we are asking for this policy board to sign the planning agreement so that the MPO has access to these funds.
All right, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there is a motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item number 6, amend the fiscal year 2014-2015 Unified Planning Work Program and add subtask 5.2 Integrated Corridor Management Deployment Planning Grants Program and Program $250,000 for the project.
Good morning. I'm Estela, the accountant for the MPO. The MPO was awarded a grant, the Integrated Corridors Management Grant. And so our UPWP amendment is to add a task for this grant, which is task 5.2, and to also program the grant amount of $250,000. $200,000 is the federal share, and then $50,000 is the local match. And so we're requesting your approval to program this grant into our UPWP.
Is there any discussion on this item? Is there? Okay. There's a motion and a second to approve. Item number 6. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Moving on to item number 7, recommend to defer evaluating a permanent solution for videotaping of TPB, Executive Committee, and TPAC meetings at the new MPO boardroom facility for consideration in the next fiscal year.
Can I, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, when we met last Friday, we talked about that, and what they're going to do is pre-wire everything now as they're doing the remodeling, have everything done, and then the amount that's needed, it's not in the budget this year, and when we talked to Mr. Medina, he said he could pull the money out, but it would prevent him from getting computers and stuff he needed to be able to make the move. So he asked that it be moved to be able to put in his budget for the next year.
What's the amount? What is the amount?
$4.38.
I wish.
What's the amount, Mike?
We came up with an estimate utilizing the City of Paso IT department for $80,000. And so that's for the purchases of all the equipment. We would also have to contract somebody to come in and do the actual performance or the mechanical component of conducting the meetings.
So we asked that we budget it for next year, but pre-wire everything and make sure it's prepared to save cost.
Okay. Representative Costa?
I was just wondering what their fiscal year is, if it goes with county fiscal year or city fiscal year. Because ours starts in September, yours starts in October, correct?
Mhm.
So is it October, is it
I
September?
believe so, isn't it?
We actually, we follow the federal.
So it's October.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So it's October. So we will be developing our new UTP, and so we'll be bringing all those items, part of the UPWP, and this will also be expressed in that development.
I think it's a good idea for you to budget it into the next
Yes,
fiscal
ma'am.
year. Okay. So,
Motion to
thank you.
approve?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to approve item number 7. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Now for item number 8, since item number 7 passed, can we take no action on that item? Okay,
Right.
so we'll just take no action on item number 8.
Good idea.
Moving on to item number 9, amend the Horizon 2040 Metropolitan Transportation Plan and the Horizon 2015 and 2018 Transportation Improvement Plan. We do have 3 speakers for this
Mr. Chair?
item. Yes.
On that item, number 8, it'd probably be best not to get a motion to delete the item so that it doesn't come up again.
Okay. There's a motion to delete the item. Who seconded? And there was a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is deleted. Okay. Item number 8 is deleted. Okay, moving on to item number 9. Should we take the speakers first, or should? Go ahead. Why don't you go first, and we'll go.
Okay, Irene Ramirez, TPAC Chair. At the April 1st TPAC meeting, we voted to recommend to you approval of the following items as listed on here. I'd like to note that for the deprogramming of the Bicycle Plan and Program 2015 project, item A and D for the 2016 project, Bicycle Plan and Program. At the last TPB meeting, there was a comment about coming back with a project for the purchase of bikes instead of the education and outreach components that had been proposed for this project. So the RMA and the city in cooperation are going to come back with a new project for just that, the purchase of bikes. And we anticipate that that will be coming back at either the May or June meeting to the TPB. And so therefore, this projects in their current scope need to be deprogrammed. And again,
Yes, ma'am.
Is it appropriate, I guess, what chime in on this, is it appropriate to say we approve the deprogramming for it to be reprogrammed for bicycle purchase, or does that have to come back as a competitive process?
The recommendation from the staff is to deprogram this project, because when we went through the planning process, we notified the public along with the federal partners that these were specific projects that the board had approved with specific monies. And so at the last policy board meeting, we were directed to go ahead and investigate what we could do with the bike share program. So ultimately, it's a new project. So
You have to actually submit a project.
Yes, ma'am.
So you can't say, we're just going to deprogram this portion of it, but we want to reprogram it to purchase bicycles.
Well,
The purchase of bicycles has to come back as a new project?
yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you.
Okay?
And then item B, deprogramming the Country Club Road roundabout because the city was not able to purchase the necessary right-of-way to construct this additional roundabout. C, deprogramming the Zaragoza National Park and Ride. The location where this project was to be constructed is no longer available. It's being used by another agency. And so it's not viable. We could not find another property that we could do this project in. E through H are projects, the top projects that were approved for this fiscal year, because it took longer than anticipated to develop the agreement template. They were not able to progress to getting them bid this fiscal year, and so we're asking for them to be moved to FY 2016. And then I think there is a separate presentation on I.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Is Representative Costa?
On item D, I mean, we have another one that's to deprogram the bicycle plan, and that's for another 100,000. So is this the same concept, Mr. Medina? It still has to come back as a new project?
Yes, ma'am.
So it'll be like $200,000 available for a new project, and we'll have to make sure our kids write a really good proposal to purchase bicycles.
Yes, ma'am. It's my understanding that through the RMA has the capability to purchase bikes. And so the project request form that the MPO is asking will capture the amount of 200,000 so that we can move forward in that process.
Okay. And then on the Zaragoza International Bridge, the park and ride, that also has to come back as a new project. Once we find land that's available for park and ride, it would also have to come back as a new project. So all of these have to come back as new projects.
Essentially, they need to come back as new projects, and then if we have the fiscal constraint within the TIP to program it against, that's where we would program it in. So ideally, if we have a submission by the member agency to reprogram this in 2017, and if we have the available capital to do it, then we would program it there.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Bernashi?
Yes, I just have two questions. One is, what's the difference between deprogram and move?
Deprogram and move?
Yeah, you have we have the A through D is deprogramming and E through H are moving. What's
I would
the
say
difference?
essentially it's one and the same. And if we need to clarify that we're deprogramming to reprogram in another fiscal year, then we'll start using that same language.
So move means the same as
It
deprogram?
means the same. So when we're deprogramming a project, we're removing it from the existing fiscal year and moving it into another year.
I thought.
Sorry. So when we're deprogramming a project, we're removing it from the current fiscal year. Here with the other elements, because there was mechanical components that were tying up the process of advancing the project, we use the word move. But essentially, what we're doing is that we're moving the current project in 15 into another fiscal year.
Could you say reprogram?
Sure, we can use reprogram.
Instead of deprogram, to reprogram?
Sure. We'll clarify that.
Okay.
So there is a difference between reprogram and deprogram?
Well, essentially, yes. So just to clarify, we'll use consistency in terms of deprogramming and reprogramming and not introduce things like move.
Okay, and when you move or deprogram the monies for this fiscal year, then what happens to those monies? Is there going to be a call for projects?
In accordance to the policy that you all approved, what we need to do is identify projects that are in the TIP that can be accelerated
Okay.
in lieu of what's being deprogrammed. So the reprogramming of those new monies are focused on the TIP projects.
And how will that happen because the fiscal year's coming to a,
Correct.
well,
So-
it's still a ways away, but not
Right.
that far.
Right, and part of the challenges that we have identified is that in the past, the policy board has allowed for us to program a new project very late in the fiscal year, and we just contractually cannot obligate it. So what's going to happen with all these projects that have become deprogrammed is that we're going to have a call to examine all the TIP projects. From there, there's available balances. We will make that notification to all the member agencies. And at this time, I guess I need to introduce that next year, around this time, you all will be approving a new TIP 2017 to 2020. And so there's a couple of new things that we need to be very careful about. But essentially, in May and June of this year, we're going to contact everybody to review all projects at what available balances are available for you all.
And so if there are programs in the TIP right now and like next year and the year after that we can move up, we can do those like TPAC and make a recommendation at their next meeting to move them up ASAP?
I would recommend against that, because there's several things that are happening that we need to ensure. Remember, you're now required to provide several materials to the MPO, a project schedule and things of that nature. So the practice that we have now is that you all submit projects to the MPO, and then we're going to review them along with the appropriate state DOT before we take them to TPAC. Because one of the comments from our partners, to include the FHWA, is that we're not doing a very good job of screening our projects. We can't afford to send projects up to the FHWA or FTA, and they are poorly described.
So the MPO will review the projects in the next several years to see which ones should be moved up and then go to recommend that to TPAC?
Ultimately, it's the TPAC. So the submission comes to the MPO. We notify everybody through the TPAC that these are projects that are being recommended for programming, and then TPAC makes that recommendation to the policy board. So there is no change in status. It's just that now we need to be mindful and enforce what the rules are.
Chairman.
Mr. Beeler.
Yeah, just to be clear, the reason I think you have E through H as move, TxDOT was late in developing a standard agreement for these types of projects. Otherwise, the projects were ready to go. So I think that's why you put move in. But the reality is that the technical process that we should have always been following is that they are deprogrammed and then reprogrammed. So this move is our fault, but it shouldn't be a move. It should be a deprogram and reprogram.
Okay. To the chair, just point of clarification. I understand the E through the H, where you're deprogramming, where you're reprogramming the same project. But A through D, we're simply deprogramming and not reprogramming. Am I correct?
That's correct.
So that means that those funds will be available and then we have to compete, correct? So it's not a deprogram and a reprogram. A through D is not deprogram and reprogram.
Right, I
Correct.
thought I was clear that I was talking about E through
Right.
H.
E through H,
ones
I
that say
understand
move.
those, because we don't want to lose those. I mean, they're already there. But the other ones, so the funding, in other words, you deprogram it, the funding becomes available for any other project. And then it goes through this whole process,
Yes.
and TPAC will select new projects. And then we have to hope that some of those will be for the bicycle share program. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I just wanted a point of clarification that it's not a reprogramming of those projects, because they will have to compete. If we submit these projects again, we're competing with any other project again. Am I correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Chair,
Yes, sir.
it may be just a question of semantics, but project E through H, should the motion be to deprogram and reprogram?
I would think so.
Yeah.
I mean,
You can make that clarification if you wish. I think the substance of the action is that you're simply reprogramming it. But you can clarify it if you want to use deprogram and reprogram, or just reprogram instead of using the word move.
and it is permissible to do that in the same motion?
Yes, it's not a substantive change that you're making.
We recommend to reprogram.
Reprogram.
Reprogram. Yes. Reprogram.
So the motion would be to approve A through D to deprogram and E through H to deprogram and reprogram.
Actually, just to reprogram. It's in the same fiscal year. We're just moving it. We need to reprogram it in there.
That would be E through H.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, that's fine.
Can we do, to the chair, can we do two motions? just for
I don't see why not,
clarification?
right, Mr. Miranda?
You can break it up if you wish. for
Okay,
clarification.
I'd like to
Okay,
make a
well,
motion, I'd like to make a motion to approve the deprogramming
Well,
of items A through
Before,
D.
it will be, I'd say before we do that, let's go through, you still have one more item I, and then we had some public speakers who
Oh, I'm
wanted to
sorry.
speak on these items.
I apologize.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah,
Can I-
Mr. Benajia.
can I- Before we go to I have a question on item C.
Yes, sir.
Talking about the reprogram and deprogram, for the park and ride area that we were going to use, that we're still going to do it, but we can't use the site we were going to do because TxDOT wanted that site back. So I like to have C reprogrammed. We already have another site for that park and ride area. So I like C to be reprogrammed to the new site, and then we'll have documents ready for fiscal 15.
I don't know that we could entertain that, because essentially what you're doing is that you're identifying a fiscal year that we haven't found a available balance. And so the location you're talking about is an entirely new location, and we would have to go through some form of public comment.
But it's within the Zaragoza Bridge area. And
Okay,
so
so I guess the information that you provided to us has probably changed, and so we probably need to re-examine what you're talking about at this point. Because what we told the public is that a park and ride was going to be built around the port of entry.
Correct.
The information we received from you all is not the same project. So there is
it's within the Zaragoza Bridge area.
We could argue that, but again,
Well, I'm not arguing it, I'm
Well, I
just
mean-
saying it is within the, it's within the bridge area.
Well, the information that we received from you all was around the Nuestra Valencia terminal.
Right.
And so that is not near the port of entry. So
What is your definition of near the port of entry?
I would say within a couple hundred feet.
We weren't in a couple hundred feet for the first park and ride area.
But again, is that, what we're trying to do here is that we're trying to avoid sending projects all the way up to the Federal Highway Administration and Transit Administration. We're going to do a lot of investment to get the documents ready, and when they get up there, they're going to come back and say that this project is inconsistent with it's inconsistent with what's in the planning documents. And they're going to say this is an entirely new project. But again, is that part of the policy allows us to go back and ascertain what is available to bring back those projects like this one.
So can I bring it up for a vote to this board?
I mean, essentially, the new park and ride would be a mile away from the original site, right? I mean, it's constituted a park.
And that park and ride site would be right next to our transit center where people could park there and walk across the street to get anywhere in town. Which is, I think, the idea of a park and ride lot is people are driving across. If they have to drive another mile to get anywhere in town, I think that's a win-win.
But I think it's.
And there's land there ready to be bought.
Right. But I think part of the policies that we adopted, I mean, wouldn't that change the scope of the project? Is what Mr. Medina, I think, is trying to say, that because of the location, right? I mean, what are the policies regarding exactly what defines, I guess, a change in the scope of project?
There really is no definition of what near means. It means whether it's practical or not. And if you drive across the bridge and you go a half a mile or 1 mile, it doesn't make any difference. The park and ride location is what counts, and it's right next, it happens to be right next to our transit center where people can go walk across the street to get anywhere in town they want to. So it even makes better sense to do a park and ride there than it does at the TxDOT property that was promised us at one time, but now isn't. So I guess I fail to see why we have to delay something that is, we're gonna program for this site anyways to begin with. It's gonna be the same site, but it's gonna be 2 years later, as opposed to doing it in 6 months.
Mr.
Chairman, there are environmental issues. TxDOT is now in the place of FHWA on environmental. And very frankly, if you've moved it a mile, the old environmental is useless. So we have to go back through that entire process. It just isn't, and I'll vote against it if you bring it up, so.
There's also right-of-way concerns at Eddie Voltaire, Texas Department of Transportation. We don't have any information, the MPO doesn't have any information at this point. Yes, Eddie Voltaire, Texas Department of Transportation. So environmental is one issue. Right-of-way, I'm not sure if we don't know anything about the property yet. If it's a private property, there's environmental implications in that. It could take a longer process to get everything approved. You can't start your right-of-way acquisition until you have your environmental cleared. So certainly for a 2015 project, the timelines don't seem to match at this point, not knowing all the information.
But by the time fiscal 16 comes around, we'll have all that information done.
Bring it back to new project.
Yeah.
Chairman, I think one of the things that we've tried to do with this process is that for a long time, we violated the rules by just pushing things year after year without giving consideration to what is changing. And I would really hate to see us go back to violating rules because, well, this one's different. They aren't, whether they're ours, whether they're the counties, whether they're the cities, anybody's. We need to go back and go through the process and do it right.
Okay. With that, can we continue on to item I?
All right, good morning. And it's probably in an appropriate place that it was in the community-based section of it, and you'll see why as I go through the presentation. So my name is Zenia Hernandez for the record, and I'm serving as the program manager for this El Paso Metropia Synergy Solution Project. And just so you know, that this is actually a project that actually you had already approved it for FY 2014, and now we've worked through Federal Highway, and so we feel a lot of the issues that they had are now worked out, and so that's some of the changes. And then the other change you'll see is a slight change in the finances of it, and I'll present that to you later. I wanted to start off with our Metropia team, and the reason for that is these are the faces of Metropia. And I wanted to point to the left top corner. Dr. Yi Chang-Chu actually was at UTEP for a while. Under him is Jorge Villalobos, who serves as a board of directors, and then Jenda Chen, who's our COO. And that partnership actually started here in El Paso. So even though Metropia is based out of Tucson, this is definitely a home away from home. Like I said, I'm a local El Pasoan, so I'm up there too. And we have Mario Salomon, who's also our operations engineer, also in El Paso, and UTEP grads. So what is Metropia? We want to focus and say this is travel demand management. A lot of the presentation will be focused on the app, but we want to say we're travel demand management. And it's one unique feature about it is that we're incentive-based, and so this is what we're offering now, the opportunity to take real-time data and incentivize that use. And you'll see a little bit more as we go through. And what we want to do here is meet regional mobility goals. And so that's part of the reason why, too, that this time around we thought it was important for you all to see this, and so you know that you're on board when it comes to regional mobility. We do this with we call it Metropia ecosystem. And so what we're saying, it's not, you just can't have one partner. You can't just have government addressing the issue of mobility. You can't just have employers. You just can't have commuters. It takes a whole ecosystem. So we have local businesses coming in, transportation agencies, commuters, and employees, all within the Metropia platform. So it's one solution where all of us can work together to improve mobility in the El Paso region. The project goal that we scoped out with the MPO was to reduce congestion and mobile source emissions in the El Paso region. And we do this again by that one platform, Metropia Synergy Solution. It's no construction. Our scope also includes identifying opportunities to integrate the use of Metropia to improve border crossings and encourage transit use. And the note on that is identifying future opportunities. So while that's not part of the scope only includes finding those opportunities for future. And I wanted to be clear on that. So Metropia Synergy, I'm going to spend most of the presentation, like I said, talking about our app, but this is all of Metropia Synergy. Part of it is that Metropia agency solution. And so the MPO's interest was mostly in that data, those analytics, that decision support. So now you have a transportation decision that you make. Now we have that support with the data to say, you know what, that was a good investment of our transportation system. And when you look at investments, we actually had a Colorado study where we looked at HSR lanes, a hard shoulder running lane, $20 million investment. And the travel time savings that we got from Metropia, we got better travel time savings with Metropia than we did with the hard shoulder running lane. And so when you're looking at that $20 million investment versus what we can do operationally, it's pretty amazing. Obviously, if you combine the infrastructure with the operations, obviously you get more synergies from that too. The Metropia business solution. This is what's really cool, that we can bring in that local component. We can bring in those local merchants, the employers. And again, the base for it is essentially acknowledging that we are all part of the problem, acknowledging that we all have the possibility to create congestion, but we also have the power to alleviate that congestion too. Behind the scenes, we have Metropia Dynamics, and like I said, Dr. Yi Chang-Tu, probably one of the best transportation models out there. With the accuracies we see on his model, we don't see any better accuracies right now. So this is Metropia capability, and this is just to show that over the years we had all different sorts of intelligent transportation systems. But what's really cool now is with our smartphones, now we have access to new real-time data with our smartphones. And I do want to say up front that that first part of the trip and that last part of the trip, it's aggregated data, so we never actually see. So for those of you with privacy concerns, we won't actually be able to see that. And so what we're doing here is we're taking that model, that incredible model Yi Chang-Tu has been working on decades for, or maybe a little less than 2 decades, like 15 years. So we take that model, we take your objectives, your local objectives, we feed them into the model, and we pull out that capability out of our existing system. So we have the infrastructure out there. How do we maximize the use of what we have? And down at the bottom, you'll see a bunch of pictures. So we can use it to do event management planning. We can do it for incident management over to the right. We can do emissions. Our model actually tracks CO2 savings. We can do, like I said, the local component, bringing in those businesses through our incentives. And then what's really cool is hopefully by the end of the year, we expect to have that multimodal aspect too. So we can bring in that transit, that walking, that biking into Metropia as well. And here's the overall concept. Whoops. Can you play it on there? Are you able to play it? Yeah. Here we go.
We've all been there, sitting in traffic congestion at rush hour. After a long day at work, you just want to get home. Instead, you're sitting in gridlock with no signs of moving anytime soon. Just like these grains of rice, vehicles at rush hour are all leaving at close to the same time and traveling the same direction. In the process, no one is getting anywhere. It's time we turn this around and rethink how we manage traffic flow. Metropia rewards you for leaving at less congested times, taking less congested routes, and even for using a different mode of transportation. Metropia's advanced traffic technology gives you new ways to travel to avoid time-consuming traffic congestion. When traffic is more evenly dispersed, the same numbers of commuters can arrive at their destinations in less time. A different transportation experience requires a different way of thinking. By working together, we can help solve traffic congestion and help drive a better city. Find out more right now at metropia.com.
All right, so the way we work together is, like you said, everybody will have access to this app. And what I wanted to point out here is that we have the ability to integrate with the local traffic management center and TxDOT's traffic management center. And that makes it really cool because then we can validate. So a lot of the apps that you see out there now, they don't have this validation component. So a lot of times they'll say there's an accident on 10, let's say, and there really isn't an accident. Maybe it's just construction. In our case, we're able to verify that information, run it through that TMC, and make sure that it's aligned with all those procedures that go through the TMC, and then send it out via social media. And then, so here's the app that I've been promising. You can go ahead.
Places to go, people to see, but so does everyone else. And we're all competing for space on the roadways at the same time. Every time you're stuck wasting time and money in traffic congestion, you probably say to yourself, why didn't I leave at a different time or choose a different route? But maybe you just didn't know how. Now there's Metropia, the app that works like a crystal ball by coordinating you and other drivers to avoid traffic congestion before you're in it. Metropia gives you the best future departures that save you time. Metropia also gives you reward points for each trip it offers. You then make a reservation for that time and route. Knowing your reservation, Metropia will inform and coordinate other users to take other, less congested times and routes. The best part is that the more people who work together by using Metropia, the better it gets in coordinating all drivers. With enough of us working together, we could actually reduce traffic congestion in our community. How cool would that be? What's more, the points you earn, use yourself, or donate to a valuable cause. Download Metropia today and help drive a better city.
All right, so what you've got with the app, we're essentially, we call it, we go through 4 phases. So we discover, we have that information. So think about right now, just think about worst case in traffic. You're sitting there, what influenced that? It could be, it could be weather conditions. It could be an accident. It could be all those things. So we capture all that data, plus the data we're capturing daily from Metropia users. So we're feeding all of that into the model. And then this is what you would see, right? You have your departure time. So typically people leave 7:45, you get no reward for those because those would be the most congested times on the highway. And so we want to reward you for taking those times, that essentially reserving that time and space on that highway. So it's about not just that route, but also that time that you're reserving. And between the two of them, you alleviate that traffic. And what our studies show is that we only need 10% of Metropia users on that particular commute to start seeing some time savings, or significant time savings. And like I mentioned on here too, late this year we'll actually have that component too, where you don't just get the different routes, the different roadway routes, but you would actually also have a transit route along with that too. And the way we do this, we call it, we avoid the herding effect. So what happens when you're in an accident, right? Everybody decides, you're in an accident on 10, so then everybody switches over to Montana. And what do you get there? You're stuck on Montana now. In this case, no, we're using all the system. So we route different people to different places. Plus with that incentive component, maybe we say, what if you go, have some dinner with your family instead, or have some dinner with a friend and alleviate that traffic. Because right now there's an accident out there, you're better off just waiting it out a little bit, and then you'll have free flow. And then like I said, with your smartphone, we validate that. Did you actually take that trip? If you actually took that trip, then you get rewarded and you get your points. And those points, you can use them, like they said, to buy all sorts of stuff. It just depends on what incentives come in, what partnerships we make with those businesses. And then what's really cool about this too, the little tree, is that it's tracking CO2 savings. So for every Metropia trip that you're taking, it's tracking that CO2 savings. When you fill up the CO2 savings tree, we plant a tree in your behalf. We can also partner on those incentives. They don't just have to be businesses. They can also be, let's say the city. The city wants to do parking spaces, or there's other incentives, maybe transit rides. Those incentives can be in any sector, or can come from any sector, excuse me. Or even, that goes even for charities too. A charity could come in and you can take your points and donate them to that charity. One of the questions we had at the TPAC was this: so when would we actually launch? This is a 2-year project, and so right up front, that's when we would do the plan for the official launch. But at month 4, that's when we would actually expect to go out to the community and start launching. By month 10, we just expect it to just keep growing and growing at that point. So we want to have it fully operational, fully ready to go for the community by month 10. And then this is the total project cost. And so we have the federal share, and this is where you'll see the change from FY 14. We still have the 80-20. The 20% local match is actually being provided by Metropia. And like I said, the reason for that is because we believe in El Paso. We think if we can launch in El Paso with border operations, then we can launch anywhere in the world. That private sector infusion is what changed. And that goes kind of back to what Federal Highway recommended with those incentives. And so now we have a private sector infusion to fund those incentives, at least to start them up, to seed them, for a total project cost. So total project cost stays the same. The difference is that 100,000 is now private sector infusion instead of part of the 80-20. I hope that was clear. And then these are the different phases that we'll go through as part of the project. And I wanted to particularly point out that phase 3 where we do have that border crossing and transit integration recommendations too. And that could be huge in the sense not just because you're not just getting this project for 2 years, because then you have a legacy. What happens now if you encourage transit use? How many, you might have the ability to actually change people's behavior. Obviously, Metropia will change people's behaviors, but maybe it can extend into long-term behaviors as well. And these are the different regional benefits that we would expect to see. Again, the highlight here is reduce congestion, improve air quality for El Paso. And within that framework, that's where we work together to scope out what it actually means for the local community. And we like to think that using Metropia will actually make happier drivers, and we can't quantify happy, but we can quantify these metrics. And so these are the metrics that we'll be saving. And you can look at that. Travel time savings, CO2 savings, fuel savings. Those are the things that we can quantify. And that's all I've got, unless you all have any questions.
Sir.
What is your, you say you have a validation on the trip truck. What is your QA on validation?
We actually, I'd have to get back to you on that, what our formal process is. But with validation, I mean, you would have the phones. And we are looking at, I will tell you, we're looking at right now, one of the issues that we had was when you have a driver, and that's more in line with safety. And so you'd have 2 drivers within a car using Metropia at the same time. Both of them would essentially get rewards points. So now we're actually trying to put a function in there where if you're driving, you can only voice activate it. And so that's in line with the safest possible procedure that we have. So, I mean, we do have a process, and I can get back to you on exactly what that process is. But whenever there are issues, essentially they get upgraded to changing the model. And so that's where we go back to that scoping and that coming back from the public to say, you know, these are the highlighted issues that we'd see. Yes, Dr. No.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Dr. No.
What kind of numbers are we looking at to make it?
No.
What are the numbers what's our goal?
For El Paso, we're looking at about 20,000 users.
At any given time, or?
Total users. And so for for I-10 rush hour traffic, it'd be 10% of that commute.
And how are we arriving at those numbers? What are you basing that on?
We just have studies. We have studies in LA. We
That's what I'm looking
have
for.
Colorado studies. We've done, Texas A&M TTI did a study. So there's several studies that have shown that 10%, and so that's what we're basing it on.
Okay, so it's
And I
shown
think the
significant
TTI
improvement in traffic based on those numbers in other areas.
Yes, and by significant, I mean take into account, while 2 minutes might not be significant, right? You say what's really 2 minutes, but you add that 2 minutes over time, and it is significant. And you add that impact, that synergy of everybody's 2 minutes on the impact on the region, and it's significant. And so I just caution the word, you know, as far as impact. Yes, 2 minutes to me might not be that significant, but when you're looking at the overall system, it can be significant. And if you look, I think in your package you had the TTI study where it actually goes back to that 10%. And it shows where that 10%, where that 10% came out of. And I think it's in their package, right?
And
It's in. That's right. If I didn't say that, we just deployed in Austin too. We deployed in Tucson and Austin in April.
So you're fully functional in Austin right now?
Yes.
Okay. And the app itself is free?
Yes, it will be free.
Okay, and the incentives, what's the incentive, I mean, why are the businesses putting this in?
Why are they?
What's in it
because
for them?
Same thing, they get the data. So now they have access. So rather than having a mass coupon go out to all of El Paso, now they have that data to say, these are the people you want to capture. Let's say you're a downtown business. Now you have that downtown, those downtown users that you could essentially have those push messages to say, hey, stay for a happy hour instead of getting on 5 o'clock rush hour traffic.
So they're sending messages to you, they're
Push
sending you
messages.
ads?
Yes.
Okay. And to fully utilize it, let's say something happens in an accident, you have to adjust, you're able to adjust it on the fly there?
Right. We're working on a button that would say help, kind of like help get me out of here. And so that would be it. And so it'd be first come, first serve. So let's say you get hit with the accident first, so obviously it would route you first, and then off that start routing at every other location.
Okay, because my initial concern would be, if something like that happened, we have laws against using cell phones while you're driving, and you're asking us to
Right.
look away from
No,
the
you're
road
right.
on
You're
the
right.
interstate.
And that's why we're working on that voice activated feature so you'd probably say, help, get me out of here. Like you'd literally say those words to your phone and then it would reroute you.
Are there any other companies that have similar apps, doing similar things in other cities?
There are, like I said, I think the biggest one that people have heard about is Waze.
Yeah.
But Waze depends on that social component. So you have, your neighbors telling you, hey, avoid I-10 or do this. And what we found, we actually did South by Southwest event management. And what we were finding is that those messages weren't necessarily accurate. So what's cool with Metropia, because of that integration, now we can actually verify that what's being said, hey, there's an accident on 10, do we actually verify that? And then sometimes it could be critical information too, so maybe somebody puts something on there that really shouldn't be going out to the entire population. With that integration, now it's able to run through the proper city procedures for getting that information out.
Okay. And the GPS you're using is tied to an actual person? I mean, you're putting in your information in this?
Yes, you are.
So you're allowing a company to track your every move and where you're going and
Okay.
how fast you're going and how long you're
That's
staying
right.
there?
That's right, and that's
and-
based on that user agreement.
Okay, and there's been no problems with people regret on privacy issues?
We haven't had any, and again, I think it's because it's tied back to that user agreement where you actually give Metropia permission to do specific things. And so I'll tell you, the two big things we have the one that says, this is how we use, the routing feature. I want to use that routing feature, and that's what I want to use Metropia for. And then you have a toggle that allows us to track you for research, for more research. So you can actually toggle off of that research point, and then you just use it from trip to trip. And like I said, beginning and end are not tracked. They're aggregated. It's aggregate data.
It actually sounds pretty good if we can get enough people that would use it. Dick has talked about something like this for a while now, trying to get something going on.
Right, the greatest benefit from this app is that we, the MPO, along with the DOTs, get the data. And so TxDOT invests a lot of its money to perform data collection. And so here we would have that data through this app. Other apps, we don't have access to that data.
Nash?
Yes, and this may be for maybe Mike, but was this program in previous tips or in tips coming up?
It was, yes, sir, it was programmed in the previous tip. And like I explained to some of the other member agencies is that the FHWA had comments about this project. And so we work with the sponsoring agency to clear all the comments. So the FHW came back and cleared this project. So it's before you now. So whether you approve it or you don't approve it, that's the outcome. But if you don't approve it, the project goes away.
Okay, and so has TPAC looked at this project, and is TPAC recommending all of these changes for item 9?
Yes, sir.
So TPAC agreed that Metropia Synergy Solution should be part of this package, I guess?
Yes, the TPAC voted to recommend the approval of these items. We got the same presentation by someone else, but we got the same presentation, and
Is
as
this-
Mike said, it was already in the tip. It was just a matter that there was FHWA comments about it that they had to be resolved.
And where was it in the tip then? What year was it? What tip are we talking about? Which year?
2014.
14.
All right, so it was the last tip.
So it just got, so what happened to it in 13 or 14?
Nothing. We could not advance it until the FHWA was satisfied with the comments.
Is Metropia, is this a private company, right?
I'm sorry?
Is this a private company, right?
Yes, it is.
Isn't this like a bidding process that we have to offer anybody else to say, hey, give me your best shot, and maybe we can get it for $1 billion? I know Google, I use Google now, and it gives me red lines where where there's traffic.
Right.
And I go around it for free.
When the MPO has a call for projects, everybody is eligible to ask for that federal aid.
So a private company could come and say, hey, I got a good project.
Yes, sir,
and-
as long as they
and
have.
not bid it out.
Well, it's not a bid. They came and made a proposal to the MPO for the eligibility of these funds. And so working through the process and the FHWA, that's what solidifies the process.
I had a question along the same, I'm sorry, would you
Yeah.
have one? I mean, it seems like so a private company is using federal funding, I guess, so how much would your company receive in advertising dollars from this whole thing? I mean, you're not doing this for free, I mean, it's.
No, and that's exactly why we have that private sector infusion to fund those incentives because of that. So essentially, like I said, the local match provided by Metropia, we have that 367,600 plus the 100,000. So essentially, for that advertising piece, we're essentially pulling it out of it, so that it is eligible for federal funding.
Right, but I'm saying, does your company receive, I guess, compensation from the companies it is that you partner with?
You know, as far as I understand, no. As far as I understand it, it's part of the system. It feeds into the system. We're a 2-year program. And then after that, it's self-sustaining is what we say. It's self-sustaining. So essentially, this would be El Paso's. And so El Paso would continue with those companies coming in and placing those incentives in there. So at this point, no, I think the incentives come in and they get fed out to the communities.
Mr. Beal?
Not a question, just a comment. Please be aware that TxDOT has just installed Bluetooth readers all through the I-10 corridor. We're installing some other Bluetooth readers, and as part of the CD Lane project, we're going to have a consultant doing some similar things. And we just need to make sure that what you're doing and what they're doing are coordinated.
Are consistent.
Because there will be a huge need for that over the next 4 years here in El Paso or something similar. So
That's right.
just be aware that that's there, and we need to get together on it.
Definitely, I agree.
Dr. Moore?
Jay, your comment, that's why I was asking if there's other companies out there that do this, because it seems to me like there would have to be some kind of fair bidding process, and hopefully that if we were to consider something like this, it would be on a best value sort of thing, so that we get the best results. I mean, the NPO getting the data sounds pretty important. She made a comment, though, that within 2 years it's self-sustaining. Are you saying then that the incentives that are put in by the private industry, the advertising income that they receive, they'll make a profit on it because the people will
Right.
use them, but the money is coming in from private sector, nothing from you, nothing goes to you, nothing comes from you. You're just a startup sort of thing to get it going?
Well, we are. I mean, as far as
Somebody's
money,
paying
we're
your
getting,
salary.
right, and that's where the federal money comes in. And because we do travel demand management, that is what we do. That's where the money comes from.
And then the federal share, that essentially 1.5 million, would that be what CMAQ funds that would, where would,
I'll defer
how
to
would we
Rod.
put that in?
I'll defer to Roger, but I believe it's category 12 discretionary, but I'll defer to Roger.
Okay, so what would it be competing against if we were to consider
Buses.
this? What, I'm sorry?
Some buses I could buy.
Oh,
some Arctic buses I could buy for Alameda.
Now you're talking to Mr. Costa.
Jeez. So now you started.
And then the city wouldn't have as many CO debt to.
I'm just trying to look at the big picture here. Okay.
Ms. Lombard?
I have a question, Mike, because in terms of the data that you'd be able to collect, I mean, it's only as good in terms of the number of individuals that are actually using the app, correct? And my concern is that, as Mr. Benajak stated, a lot of people use Google Maps already for free, and so I don't know that the return in terms of what we would be giving, it sounds like a good program, but again, the data that you receive in return is only as good as the number of individuals that actually use it.
Yeah, that's true.
Mr. Chair, just to follow up. So what we're saying is, for the Zaragoza Park and Ride that wasn't able to go through this year is going to be deprogrammed. This project that was 2 years ago doesn't have to be deprogrammed and reapply, but it's just carried over to do now, correct?
Right.
Correct? Correct. So I would rather have to move projects that have been already approved in the future TIPs forward to use this $1.8 million as opposed to something that should be deprogrammed and then ultimately reapply again for future years. That would be the same type of precedence that it's not a precedence. You would be setting a precedence by a program that's not approved 2 years ago. We're just going to move it forward as opposed to deprogram it and then reprogram or reapply again, like I would have to do for the Park and Ride at Zaragoza.
Right, well, the FHWA had comments. So the policy board, since it was first approved, never deprogrammed this project. So essentially, it's in the books. But again, the action here is for you to either approve or not approve. If you don't approve, then the balances go back to the MPO pot.
Why can't?
Metropia?
No, I'm sorry.
Sorry. You said it's functional in Tucson and Austin. Do you
That's right.
have that 10% usage at this point?
No.
And if not, when do you project having that 10%?
Within the first week, we had about 2,000 users in Tucson. So obviously, there's a lot of excitement right up front. And so our goal for the 20,000 is within a year. That's the goal. And I did want to touch back on other companies. The CTRMA in Austin actually did go out to see if there was other apps or just anything out there that would have the same capability, the same, or not even the same, but just competing capabilities. And there wasn't anybody who came in.
Okay, Mr. Doolittle first, and then Mayor Miller.
So-
Mr. Hernandez, I do have another question. With all the development, specifically in New Mexico at the border and in the Sunland Park area, what are the boundaries of where they'll be able to use this app?
We're saying the MPO boundary. So we capture everybody once they enter that MPO boundary. Obviously, we're Metro Mobility, so we're focused on the El Paso metropolitan area. But obviously, we capture them within that MPO boundary.
So anybody who's crossing the sanitary support of entry headed to I-10, for instance, at the I-10 interchange at Artcraft, ultimately could use this app to maybe find another way around that interchange or 273, for instance.
It goes within that El Paso regional boundary, yes. It goes for any port of entry.
To the point of this is a private company not having to go through a bidding situation, this is not the first time this body has approved private developmental technologies, funding private developmental technologies without, say, a project. I mean, it is a project call, it's not a bidding situation. So this is not the first time we've done this. We did this with border crossings, we did this with several other things. So that part of it is, it's not the first time we've done this.
Chair, I know that you mentioned that you've done this in Austin and in Tucson, but in those cities, there's many more interstate highways than in El Paso. We have one. And so then we have one in the loop, and then US 54.
does your app actually maybe even include the non-state and federal highways? Does it include like perhaps some of the other areas? I'm sure you could include it, but
Yes, it does. It's that El Paso MPO boundary. So yes, it's all those roadways, because that's exactly what we're doing. We're saying you don't have to. That's another thing with some of the other apps out there. They tend to favor highways. We don't. We're saying you have this system, and yes, it might not be the system in Austin or in Tucson or anywhere else. This is the El Paso system, and that's good enough. We just need to pull the efficiency out of it.
Okay. Because, and again, we've experienced where I-10 is closed, and, getting from downtown just to maybe, say, this area, it's bottlenecked everywhere. If you take Montana, it's bottlenecked. If you go south and you want to take Alameda, it's bottlenecked. If you go further south and take the loop, it's still bottlenecked. So we don't have a lot of other areas to travel. So
That's the whole Metropia concept, right? That's the whole Metropia concept. This is what we have, but now what if we are able to reserve that time now? All of a sudden, you get a little bit more efficiency out of, you said you have Montana. Okay, but now what if everybody's not on Montana at the same time? What if now we can stagger that just so that it's free flowing? And on the transportation side, we're actually using that data to better simulate those signals.
You need to look at Montana in the afternoons on Global Reach. It's pretty bad, and there's nowhere else they can go, unless they travel like 4 miles down or 5 miles to the interstate, and that's bottlenecked.
Right.
So where else would they go? I mean, where else would they go? I mean, a lot of these are trucks, and they can't go except on state or the federal highway.
Right. And again, so this project, it has the scope, right? We want to reduce that, and that's the issue for all of us, and that's what we're saying. Acknowledge what the issue is. The issue is we need to reduce congestion, and that's something for all of us to get together and scope it out to see how we best use a tool that we have, because for once we have this amazing tool. So how do we use this tool to most effectively be used in El Paso? And so, I was part of the Fort Bliss expansion. So we're out there, and everybody goes in at the same time. Everybody leaves at the same time. I get it. But there's a lot that feeds into that. But now if we're able to reserve again that time and space, maybe we start to pull those efficiencies out of what we have. We have what we have, and that's what we need to work with.
Now, does it monitor the flow of traffic, or just the traffic that you have, people that are actually signing on to the app?
No, like I said, there's Yi Chang Chu's model is actually he uses Dynasty, so it's micro simulation, macro simulation. He's feeding all that into our model, and like I said, when it comes to a model, I can't speak highly enough of Dr. Yi Chang Chu, and if any of you worked with him while he was here, you know how amazing he is. So yes, all that's being factored into the background dynamics, the background model.
Now, there's other individuals, such as myself, that maybe just Google and say, okay, I'm going to see what the alternate routes are. So do you also capture some of that data, like people that are actually going onto Google and saying, well, I don't want to take Montana, how else can I get from point A to point B?
No, not that I'm aware of at this time. No, I mean, the whole point is you have that app. You have data that we've never had before. As a transportation engineer, this is awesome. This is new data. This is the best data out there right now, and so we want to use it. And so that's what we're not really going into online and seeing what they're
And then
doing.
would you also have, in other words, would something be available to say, well, you can also park and ride, like say you can park in one of the park and rides and take the bus and that?
Actually, yes. There's another app out there, and it's a parking app, and that goes more in line with our event management. And I didn't say this, but behind the scenes, obviously, we have the overall goal: reduce congestion, improve air quality. But behind that, we also have various programs within the company that are coming up. So we have that employer program, and we have the event program. So with event management, yes, that's exactly it. So we say, okay, everybody's headed over to the Monster Truck Show downtown, and it's going to be a mess. We know it's going to be a mess. So what can we do to incentivize that travel? Well, a lot of people might not want to leave early or late because they're afraid of that parking space, or late, I'm sorry, because of that parking space. Well, what if you can now reserve that parking space? And so, yes, we are actually bringing in, I believe it's called Parking Panda, into our system so that you wouldn't have to necessarily leave Metropia to go into Parking Panda. It would already be part of the model. So we're actually working with them to work, yes. Yes, it would already be in there, and you reserve that spot as part of our event management.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I know you answered this question already. Anthony is in the very edge of the boundaries of the MPO, and so we will be able to use that information all the way up there, right? We're not going to be hazy, or you will include that part of the MPO boundaries.
Yeah, the data coming in is the same as El Paso, but like I said, our goal is metro mobility. So yes, the focus is El Paso metropolitan area. So really, what we want to capture you is those commuters coming in. That's who we want to alleviate their situation. Not necessarily the people in Anthony, within Anthony. We want to, when they come in, we don't want them sitting on 10. We don't want them sitting on Montana or wherever else.
And I understand the El Paso area is a big metropolitan area. Where I guess what I'm getting at is, if I'm in my house, I want to get on I-10, and there's a big accident right on as I enter I-10, will you capture that information?
You will, right. You will get all the same information that El Paso has.
Even this morning, just to get over here, we had to leave almost an hour early because of construction on the freeway, which is not in El Paso, but in between both Anthony and El Paso.
Right.
I just want to make sure that we're not hazy or there's no information.
And what you can do, just to verify that, when you go home, you can actually download Metropia on Apple. At the Apple Store, you can actually download it, or if you use Android with Google Play, you can download it now, just so you can make sure it's not live in El Paso, but you can download it. So just so you can see that it's not hazy for you.
Mayor Leaser.
So really basically, if you're in Las Cruces or you're in Deming or wherever you may be and you plan to come to El Paso, you put in your destination, you put whatever, and it's going to show you the thick spots. So it works everywhere. It doesn't matter where you're at.
Right.
So you put it in and you go, okay, I'm going to El Paso, but I'm in Cruces right now. And you put in your information. It's going to tell you that before you get to Trans Mountain, it's getting really bad. You might want to go Trans Mountain. So it gives you basically your route. Or if you're sitting at work at 5 o'clock, and I think Commissioner says you don't leave till 6, but let's say you're at 5 o'clock and you see that you're going to be stuck for an hour, you stay there for another hour, and then you kind of create your own habits based on traffic, based on research you can do without ever moving out of your office, correct?
You can, but I will say that what's nice about Metropia is you don't have to have that built-in knowledge or that built-in, just anybody, it's giving you the information. So you
That's
don't
what
have
I'm saying,
to
so you can put
develop
it in
those
and get the
patterns.
information before you leave, so
Yes,
you know where you're going.
Yes, you have that information. You can plan.
Right, so it
plan.
doesn't matter if you're in Las Cruces or wherever you may be.
Right.
You can get that information prior to leaving.
Yes,
So it works
definitely.
everywhere.
That's the whole point, right?
You can use Google Maps to do this.
Well, Google Map gives you green, red, and yellow.
Yeah, so stay away from the red.
Right.
I do it before
Well, the
I leave
difference
work
is
every
this
day.
gives you the alternate routes, because I use
I
Google when
also
I'm in
won't get the
California.
incentives or a tree.
Yeah, when I'm in California, you do that. I'm gonna be here all day.
Right. Plus Google Maps won't say, hey, Mr. So-and-so, I know you have a transit stop right next to your house, and I noticed you don't use it. How about you consider using this route, and look how many points you get just for getting on that transit system. And you get that transit system, you get those reward points, and you get to see the benefit of riding transit, of working on the Brio versus sitting in traffic. And so you build that usership also.
Okay, I'm gonna bring this up. We do it at city council all the time, I yell at my city manager for east side, west side stuff, but this benefits New Mexico cities as well on our periphery. So are there any New Mexico dollars coming into this, or is it all Texas dollars? We'll call this a north-south thing.
It does.
And there's nothing wrong with like New Mexico. We like you guys.
Ultimately, it's all federal, but it's coming from the Texas side.
It's coming from the Texas
Yes,
side,
ma'am.
correct?
Well, it's coming from our pool of federal monies. So the answer is no.
The answer is no. We won't use it till we cross into Texas.
Okay, you said it.
Is there any further discussion on this item before there's two more public speakers on this item? Okay.
We should got on the hot seat.
Let's go to Mr. Scott White from below El Paso.
Good morning again, members of the board. Scott White with Paso. We lament the loss of the $200,000 from the bike education and outreach program under A and D, but we do hope that once it is deprogrammed, it really does come back to bicycles somewhere. We need this kind of infrastructure because it's not just encouraging drivers to take off at a different time. We actually want to see the infrastructure that allows people to get out there and use the streets and use the bikes, whether it is additional bike lanes or in this case, as suggested, to increase the bike share. And so this is something we hope will make that bike share program even more sustainable for the community. But it's all these kind of things that we need to look at, not just saying, okay, just change your driving behavior. Look at those alternatives to driving to get out there, because we do have an epidemic of health issues, heart disease, obesity, diabetes, and one of the best ways to deal with that is to get out there and change sedentary activity, get out of the seat of the car and get active. And that's what we want to see, is more active, healthy transportation options for this region. So whatever is done with this, we hope it stays with that part of the focus on transportation. It's healthy, active transportation. Thank you very much.
Next, we have Mr. Brandon Guzman from the Office of State Rep Cesar Blanco. You good? No?
Thank you. He meant to sign into attendance.
Oh, okay.
Are you sure?
Okay, so we have items A through I guess so for clarification, let's separate this into three motions. I'll entertain a motion to, is there a motion to deprogram items A through D?
Second.
Okay, there is a motion and a second to deprogram items A through D. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? For items, next, is there a motion to reprogram items E through H?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? For item I, to program the Metropia Synergy Solution, is there a motion to program this? And I'll actually ask for a roll call vote because there seems to be some disagreement on this. So is there a motion to program the Metropia Synergy Solution, item I?
So moved.
There's a motion and a second. And let's take a roll call vote on this one, please.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
can I
sir.
just have a comment on that?
Yes, sir.
And just so, I just want to make it clear that when old projects get moved to the new current year, like we're doing with Tropia, without it ever being deprogrammed or reprogrammed or anything, but it's just being moved here because FHWA says they like it, as opposed to what we've done to deprogramming and reprogramming just previously in these votes. I think there's there's not a consistency in what we're doing with something that Metropia, just because FHWA likes it, it should have.
Comment on that. This is Genevieve with FHWA.
Okay.
Okay.
Just a moment. Mr. Benacci, can you finish up?
Well, I'll wait till after, but,
Okay.
Okay.
Okay,
Just a moment.
but anyway, so I think that should have been deprogrammed and then reapplied for in whatever TIP year they want to do it, just like we did for the first four items we voted on. I think it's totally a different thing. So I'm not going to vote for I, just because of that principle that if we deprogram certain items that aren't good enough to go then in a fiscal year, but we have to reapply in future years, I think that should go hold true for Metropia too. And then I would like to add that for those, that $1.8 million, $1.9 million, that we have buses, replacement buses in future years. I'd like to move them up to 1.9 to help out with the Alameda RTS and to buy RTICs so that we could actually launch an Alameda RTS without incurring more debt than the city has to.
Okay. Ms. Genevieve, did you want to say something?
I guess our concerns when we received this was approved by the policy committee
for 2014, and our concerns when we received this project were the incentives. And we did not want to pay with federal dollars for the incentives that Metropia was including. So I think our concerns are cleared up now, and it's not a project that we chose, but it's a project that the policy board had previously approved in your TIP. So I'm just saying we're not showing favoritism to anybody, but it's something that you guys had already directed funding to be programmed on.
Okay.
But the policy board had approved all these programs in the TIP. And so we're deprogramming some items now for whatever reason. So last year, or the year before, it should have been deprogrammed because of, for whatever reason, and reapplied just like we're going to reapply for the park and ride. But we do have projects that are available right now in future years that I can move up to help out on Alameda RTS project, which is a huge project for this area. And that seems to be way more appropriate than taking something that should be reanalyzed officially and not just, well, you know, it wasn't approved last year, so let's just do it this year. Because Metropia wants it, you know, I'm sure they're going to make money on it.
I guess if we can have a minute to talk about the project readiness report as it relates to this project, so we can clarify some things.
Also, while we're waiting, I wasn't around when all this happened, but it does appear that the scope hasn't changed in this program versus what we were arguing in the other. They just needed clarification, but nothing changed.
If I may, Roger Williams, the El Paso MPO, on page 16 of 20 of your project readiness report, which is in front of you. If you'll take a look at the Zaragoza International Bridge Park and Ride project, we've been tracking this project for quite some time. It's gone before the TPAC. You'll see it has a high alert. These are because of some of the issues that have previously been mentioned, considering the development of the environmental document, considering the right-of-way acquisition that's required for this project. We recognize this and presented this to the policy board at the last meeting, that this was a high alert, that there was no chance for this project to move forward as it is programmed right now. Understanding that the request is to move this project to 2016, the schedule for this is being presented currently to the El Paso MPO, and that we need to work with TxDOT to assure that the schedule, you know, we can just say, okay, let's move it to 2016, but before we move it to 2016, this project should go back through the process, come back to the TPAC. The TPAC should be looking at it. And even before that, the MPO should be sitting down with the city and Sun Metro and TxDOT to assure that that schedule can indeed be met. There's no assurance that this project can even make a 2016. The way it's programmed right now and changing the location changes the scope of the project. The scope of the project changing to the level that it's going to changes the project. It's no longer the same project. It's not a matter of reprogramming. This would be deprogramming, having a new project submitted to the MPO. The MPO would have to go through all of that work, get it back to the TPAC, get the TPAC's recommendation to do this properly, and then be able to say if there's monies, then we should be able to program those monies on that project. So this project has not demonstrated continuous progress. If you go back to your policy that you passed at the last policy board meeting, this project certainly does not demonstrate the ability for the TPB, as it states in the policy, to reprogram this if it's not demonstrating all these milestones the way it should be. So, just with that said, I think you should consider that as far as the Zaragoza International Bridge Park and Ride project. The other project, the Metropia project, it doesn't exist in our document, the TIP that is anymore, because it was a 2013 to 2016 TIP that it was in. It's not a matter really of whether it's in the TIP right now like the other projects that we're reprogramming from 15 to 16. They're clearly there. It's a matter of reprogramming them. As Federal Highway has demonstrated, this project was held up on their end because there was some concerns about the incentive program. I think it demonstrates continuous progress that this project has gone through Federal Highway and been examined, and it was kicked back and it was not approved because of an element that now Metropia is coming forward and saying we're getting private sector funding to take care of the issue that Federal Highway is saying it was held up for in that reason, a project that you previously approved. I think it does demonstrate continuous progress. So I think you should probably consider that in your action here. So again, Zaragoza International Bridge Park and Ride, though clearly we just don't know that it can make a 2016 just because we think that hopefully it will.
Wait, one question. Mike, I mean, is there, if item 9 were not approved and that funding would go back to the pond, I mean, is there any risk of that money being lost or returned?
Yeah, the money goes back to the MPO balances.
Okay. Representative Costa?
Thank you, Chair. I have a question. What I just heard was it's not in the tip right now. Are we in any violation? I guess this is to legal. Are we in violation because it's not in the tip? I mean, should it, even if it wasn't, if it was, FHWA holding it up, shouldn't we have automatically moved it into the tip?
It didn't, no, because when we started the new tip, it started with the 2015 year. This project was in 2014, so it fell out by de facto. It wasn't allowed to move there because Federal Highway was basically not approving it. So when we got to the 15 to the 18 tip, we couldn't program it. Throughout the last year or so, we've been working with Federal Highway because the project is not unique to El Paso. They also were looking at one in Austin. Federal Highway has recently approved the Metropia project in Austin. And the Metropia group has come forward and said the concern that Federal Highway has is that the incentive program was funded with federal funds. They've come back and said we'll fund that with private sector funds. So the project, for all practical purposes, in our 15 to 18 document, it doesn't exist. So what in all reality, Metropia is coming forward to you now and saying, may we program this project in 2015 and move forward with it because we think we've worked out the issues that we've got and concerns that we have with Federal Highway.
But I would have to agree with Mr. Banashak because, I mean, if it's not in the tip, then they would have to actually resubmit, in my opinion.
They did. Project request form, it's in your packet. It's a new request for this.
But you're just saying that it wasn't in the tip, so it should have been in the tip and then they should have programmed, in other words, it should have submitted their programming. If I had a project in 2013 and it didn't move into the tip, can I now say, well, wait a minute, it was in 2013, it's not there now, so I want to program it?
You would have to come back through the process.
So why didn't this one happen that way?
This project was, it was tied up at the end of the fiscal year 2014 when we're developing the new 15 to 18 tip. There was a lot of hope that we would have all of these issues worked out with Federal Highway in time for this project to obligate in 2014. But before that, the development of the 2015 to 18 tip did not include it. So it was in 14. The 15 to 18 tip didn't include it because the thought was that it would get cleared, that the Federal Highway would allow the project to move forward and be authorized in the year 2014. It fell between the cracks, if you will, because it didn't happen. It didn't happen in 14. So for all practical purposes, it was removed from our document because when the new document came forward, it didn't make it there. But it was always in the background that this project was still potentially going to get recognized by Federal Highway as being an eligible activity. Now it potentially is. So Metropia has come back with a submission of a project in a form of a project request form to go through the process, just like all new projects do, and it went back to the TPAC for a recommendation.
Well, I have serious concerns because it was not in the tip, and we're kind of like circumventing part of that process. So I'm not going to support it.
It was in the tip.
Not in this current tip.
It's not in this current tip.
So I have huge concerns over that. That we're circumventing that process, and so I'm not going to support it. It should have been in the tip. It should not have fallen through the cracks.
We can't put it in the tip.
That's my position. I won't support it. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I can just add to that. If you're going to add new projects in this tip, you should do a call for projects, which wasn't. It just isn't like, well, I got match money, so I want you guys to approve a new project. We have this board has approved several years in the tip, And if you have additional money in this year's TIP, we should be able to move projects that are ready to go in future years and move them in here. We already approved that.
Right, and that's.
And
the
that's
call
what
of the
that's my
transportation
point,
policy
is
board.
to move projects that we've already approved forward, which, if they're ready to go, and I'm ready, I'll order a bus today if I get approved the money to do it. And Metropia can reapply for next year or whenever there's a new call of projects and go through the same process that I'm gonna have to do Zaragoza Park and Ride. That's all, and that's what I'm saying. I think that is consistent with this board's policies, that people just can't add a project because, oh, well, I got match money now, and all of a sudden, here we go. Now we vote on it.
We've had a motion in a second, haven't we?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
There's a motion and a second. Madeline, can we do a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Chair, can I see what the motion is, or can I hear what the motion is?
Well, the motion is just as written, to program the Metropia Synergy Solution project in FY15. So a yes vote would program the funds, a no vote would not approve the programming of these funds, correct? For clarification, is everyone clear on that?
Yeah, A and B's already done, or these two are done already, so it's just.
Mayor Miller?
Yes.
Mayor Miller?
Yes.
Dr. Mel?
No.
Representative Acosta?
No.
Mr. Gonzalez?
I think based on my meetings with the NPO and the TxDOT and the rules that we need to follow, I'm going to have to vote no.
Mr. Marquez?
No.
Mr. Norwood?
Yes.
Judge Escobar?
No.
Commissioner Perez?
No.
Mayor Leeser?
No.
Mayor Prano? Yes. Mayor Sanchez?
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia?
Yes.
Mr. Benajek?
No.
Ms. Lombrania?
No.
Representative Gomez?
Can I abstain?
You can abstain.
No.
Mayor Perea?
No.
Mr. Doolittle?
No.
Mr. Bielek?
Yes.
And Mayor Castañeda?
Yes.
There might be no more, no.
Motion fails. There are 12 noes and yes, 8 yeses, sorry.
Right, so essentially, the balance, the money will go back into the balance for this board.
Mr. Chair, can I make a motion on item I to, I don't even know if it's appropriate or not, and council, you have to let me know, that I like to move bus purchases in future years up to this year.
We're not posted for such action.
We don't have a system to get people in the buses now. We just order it down.
Thank you for trying, Jay.
A real concrete man there.
Item number 10, approve requests to excuse absent TPB members. We have requests from the Texas State Delegation for Representatives Blanco, Gonzalez, Marcus, Moody, Pickett, and Senator Rodriguez. Is there anyone else? No.
Yes, we have Mayor Reinhardt and Mayor Jesus Reese and Representative Nyland.
Okay.
Second.
So motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Let's see, next item, monthly report from the chair. I just want to recognize the Mayor Pro Tem from Clint, Mr. Rick Avalos. Is he here? just want to say welcome to the TPB. I also want to extend condolences to Mayor Prano and Vinton for the passing of Councilman Jaime Lopez, who recently passed away. Suddenly at a very young age of 36. So our condolences there.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
The next meeting of the TPB is scheduled for 9 a.m. The 29th of May, 2015, at the new El Paso MP, located at 211 North Florence, boardroom, first floor. Okay, Mike, anything else?
No, that's it.
Same time, different location. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn? Motion second, all in favor? Any opposed?